3. Naruto didn't know how it came to this, but he was standing at the gates of Suna, with Temari beside him, Gaara holding out his right hand. The man who was going to become Godame Kazekage was being guarded by a man he learned to be Baki, the man who has been the sensei of the Sand siblings since they were young. He was their sensei when they went to Konoha for their Chunin exams, and he was helping Gaara prepare for his role as Kazekage. When he informed them he would be leaving, he was told to wait for a day. They would make preparations to send Temari to Konoha so that she could inform the village of Gaara's appointment. She was the one who would be handling dialogues between the two villages. Naruto had waited. Gaara had asked him. I was just a single day anyway. There was no smile on Gaara's lips when Naruto shook his hand. I hope you come again soon to visit us, Naruto. I will try to make time, Naruto said. It wouldn't be any time soon. He was going back to his journey. His training with Jiraiya, and once he was satisfied, he would think about Konoha and what he had to do. There was no hurry to go back. He was content as things were in the sand, and training him wasn't complaining either. You will always be welcome. You have been a good friend, Gaara said. Please take care of my sister along the way. This time, Naruto smiled. I will try to do that, but she is plenty strong, he said, eyeing the blonde sister of the Kazekage. For some reason, Temari looked annoyed. Come on, we don't want the sun to set while in the desert, she said to Naruto. I will be safe, Gaara. You don't have to worry. Baki shook his head. You really have to be careful, Temari. There are elements within the hidden leaf that don't like the fact that things are being done this way. You never even know that other forces are watching. Someone might just decide to do something just to make sure that Suna and Konoha never become allies. Naruto could understand what the man was saying. Dangerous creeps were always lying in the shadows, and it was truly interesting that the man was willing to say in front of him, a Konoha shinobi. For sure the man probably didn't trust him but was going with the flow because the Sand siblings trusted him. Which forces wouldn't want the relationship to work? No, within Konoha, the dark forces only wish for Suna to surrender itself to Konoha. There were such forces. There was a saying, everyone has darkness. Konoha had its darkness, and so did Tsunagakure. The difference was how people dealt with their darkness. Temari pulled Naruto away before Gaara could say anything. Naruto had noticed that the Jinchuriki hadn't been particularly pleased with what Baki had said. If anything, it looked like he was contemplating on having someone else go with her as her guard. As they sped through the desert, Naruto glanced at the silent Temari. I never asked, how are you dealing with the change? Your brother usually threatened you but now is very protective. I'm just happy that I have my younger brother again. He was a very gentle child before our father sent people to kill him. Our father viewed things based on their value, even people. If he no longer saw value in something, he would get rid of it. He tried doing that to Gaara, but my brother would kill all the people, and so he stopped trying to do it. It was easy to understand why Gaara turned in the way he did. To have your own father try to kill you because he viewed you as a failure. But it wasn't Gaara's fault. It was their crappy Funjutsu users who couldn't devise a seal capable of allowing Gaara to use Shukaku's chakra without the Biju influencing him. The Uzumaki would never create something so pathetic. Funjutsu in some other villages was truly cheap imitations of the work of art that his clan was able to create. The seal that housed the Kyuubi was an example of this. It may have been used by his father, but the basis of it came from work of the Uzumaki, something that his mother taught the Yondaime. You look displeased. Naruto smiled. Got lost in thought, he said. I don't know what I would if my own father was trying to kill me. Then again, had it not been for some of the Sandaime's laws, I might have just hanged myself. Temari frowned. He could say something like that and yet sound so indifferent. Regardless of how you thought of it, that was just sad. Do you really have to say something like that in that tone? This is because it is the past, Temari. That aside, I have come to understand that only hopeless people will think of ending their lives. My situation wasn't hopeless, I'd just yet to see the light, Naruto said a bit firmly. I'd like to camp somewhere closer to the border of the fire country. Can we speed up a bit? You do know that I don't have as much stamina as you do, right? Well, if you get tired, I will carry you, Naruto said with a smile. I'd rather you not. Naruto just laughed and they ran through the desert, taking water breaks in there and then. By the time they reached the river country, the sun had already set and they stopped running. They walked slowly for a couple of hours before they finally reached a place where there was a stream of water and decided to rest close to it. Fire was set and tents were put up. Naruto collected the wood and did the fishing while Temari watched. He seemed like he was used to this kind of thing. His tent though, it was big and she had peeked inside. It wasn't the kind of thing Shinobi carried. It looked just way too comfortable for camping through the night. Then again, this wasn't to make you suffer. You couldn't mistake the symbols on the tent. It was the symbol she saw on every shirt he wore. Where had she seen it again? Temari couldn't recall, but it was obviously something that had a meaning to Naruto. She was alone with Naruto, only separated by the burning fire that kept their bodies warm. Temari hadn't really thought such a moment would come. She hadn't thought it would feel so weird. They were alone. No witnesses. He was the person who said things that provoked her to think thoughts she would never think. It worried her. It wasn't her physical safety that worried her but her emotional state. Naruto's face was strange. Since he walked away down the water stream and disappeared, he was strange. She couldn't see it clearly, but she could feel that there was something different. I'd thought you'd be saying all kinds of things now that we are alone, Temari said. It wasn't that she wanted him to tease her. She didn't want it. But she had nothing better to say to break the awkward silence. It was the first time she was experiencing this moment with him. Then again, she had never been so alone with him. Naruto's eyes moved towards Temari. They could clearly see her. He could feel her breathing. She wasn't calm. She was having a difficult time. He could feel the slight tension in the air around them. Perhaps it was his silence. He'd never been so silent with her. You have your guard up. I'm waiting till you get sleepy before pouncing. Temari smiled hearing those words. It didn't make her uncomfortable, it made her happy that he had responded positively. That reminds me, I'm sleeping with one eye open. Can't trust you not to peek while I sleep, can I? Naruto shook his head, wagging his index finger. You're thinking peeking, I'm thinking you waking up in the morning next to a nude me. Temari shivered at the thought. She fought hard to avoid picturing him naked. She was glad for the fire that he couldn't see the pink tint on her cheeks. Now that she thought of it, she hadn't even seen his chest. He really did like covering up his body. Forget his chest, she hadn't seen his arms up his to his elbow. He always wore long-sleeved clothing. I'd have to be dead for you to get that close. Even if you do get that close, when I arrive in Konoha, I will also be sending my condolences for their loss. Naruto laughed. You wouldn't want to kill your brother's friend, would you? Temari shrugged. I'm sure he'd understand if I say his so-called friend was trying to violate me. Naruto looked thoughtful. Well, I can see him nodding, saying that you did the best thing, the blonde said. We will separate here, Temari. I won't go anywhere further with you. I have to turn towards Takumi. I could escort you near Konoha and still be able to meet Jiraiya in time, but you'll be safe. He was serious. Temari was a bit surprised for a moment. Not at those words but the seriousness of his tone. It sounded like she was talking to someone in power, someone who was dishing out instructions that were not to be questioned. Why? Naruto knew. She was asking why he didn't want to get close to Konoha. She was curious. My training trip wasn't supposed to take long, but it has been over 2 years and we are working towards a third. They probably want me to return, but Jiraiya and I still have many things to do. If I go near, I will be forced to get into Konoha. The moment I step through those gates, I won't be able to leave again. My training trip will be over. That was reasonable, Naruto thought. For some reason, Temari thought he just didn't want to return to Konoha. She couldn't understand why. He didn't talk much about the leaf. He almost never said anything unless you asked. She didn't want to be nosy, but she was curious. She nevertheless didn't ask him. She didn't want to be a bother. I see, Temari said. She paused, and stared. She wanted to ask, but she didn't know how to say it. When do you think we will meet again? At that moment, Naruto realized he had grown a little too attached to this person than he would have liked. He had trained with her for many days. He had shared many laughs with her. He had seen her smile. He had seen her flustered. And honestly, he thought it was adorable. His smile would only make her angry. But that was fine. That was Sabaku no Temari. Naruto smiled. Temari saw it. When Naruto realized he was smiling, and he had been caught, he didn't drop it. He was used to her presence, her curious glances. She was always trying to figure him out, trying to study him. Perhaps it was dangerous for him. But he was okay with it because she never asked. She never tried to sneak behind him to see what he was doing. She was curious, but she knew not to pry. Naruto didn't hate her. But what? He shook his head. He was overthinking things once more. He did like people at a distance despite openly chatting to them, didn't he? Was it because he always wanted to be in charge? Once more, he shook his head. I don't really know, but if you miss a training partner, let me know. I don't even have a way of contacting you if you are not going to be in Konoha, Temari said with a frown. Sometime in 5 or 6 months, we should be making way towards Konoha. Jiraiya said we'd have to discuss the conclusion of things, but we will surely see each other soon, Naruto said. That was the truth. He would see her again. But, Lord, he was walking into another dangerous situation. But this seemed fine. Her brother looked like a decent person. She was a pleasant person. He had his issues. He could work on them. And nobody needed to get caught up in it. Naruto smiled inwardly. Was it concern for other people? He has truly become soft in the inside. He could blame the Sandaime Hokage for this change. He had stopped caring. But Team 7 made him see things. It made him experience new things. Perhaps he enjoyed those fleeting moments a bit too much than he should have. Connections. Friendship, they were never meant to be lasting. He was never meant to be attached. Temari smiled. I hope so, she said. A moment of peace settled in. She enjoyed it. How different her life has become over the past month. It was amazing how things could change. But then again, she never had a boy who wasn't her brother close to her. She had someone she could call a friend. Someone outside of her family. It was a good feeling. She glanced over at Naruto. His eyes were on the fire. She cast her eyes at the burning flames. She listened to the sound the wood made as they burnt. She laughed. She was amused at herself. When did she start doing this? She really needed to get a hold of herself. And you were saying people would think I was the crazy one, Naruto said after a moment. Temari realized she'd make a sound. She wasn't embarrassed, she just shrugged carelessly. Oh brother, she was picking up his habits. I couldn't help myself. She was glad Naruto didn't ask. That happens, he simply said. Say, Naruto, Temari started, staring deeply into his eyes. When he stared back, she shook her head. She could ask another day. Never mind, she said. I'll ask when I see you again. It was unlikely to be soon, but Naruto wasn't that curious to know what she wanted to ask. His mind was already filled with too many things. I'll remind you, I'm going to check the perimeter. He stood up. Take my tent for the night. I will keep watch. Not for the whole night. Wake up me so that you can also rest. Naruto nodded. I will do that. He would not. He did not. Temari only woke up early in the morning, and when she woke up, he was gone. He wasn't taken. He had just left her. Yes, she thought it like that. He had left her. There was only a letter beside her. A couple of words that didn't give her comfort over the loss of her companion. Temari took the letter and hugged it. For the first time since he came to Suna, Temari felt lonely. She felt alone. A megacure. The shinobi world was ruled by power. It was those with power that determined everything. Nagato had power. A megacure had power. The great 5 nations were powerful. That was why their wars always affected even the smaller villages. They were always caught in the crossfire. They always get crushed under the weight. A megacure had wounds from wars it did not start, wars it had no part of. He had pain, memories that he could not remove from his head. Because those with power used it recklessly and they suffered from it. But they would suffer no more. A megacure would not suffer anymore. This village. This home of his, it was firmly in his hands. The grip of the past dynasty, he had crushed it. There wasn't anything tangible that remained of it. Nothing. He eradicated it. It was nothing but just memories from the minds of people. But that would too disappear. His village had a massive population. But it didn't have many shinobi. That was why it was considered weak. That was why it was indeed weak in the past. But it was weak no longer. Over the past 5 years, he had been building its military strength. It had shinobi who could fight. Shinobi who could stand behind to withstand the might of any hidden village. Jinchurikis were not a consequence. He could handle them because he was strong. Konan Nagato glanced over his shoulder as his partner walked towards him. Itachi just left the village. Did he say anything to you? Konan nodded. Sometimes the Uchiha had a tendency to walk away from the village without saying anything. The journey always ended up in the Fire Nation. She had always assumed he was going to check on the hidden leaf, but he never said anything and they never asked him. He is going to offer his services to Yuzu. Konan handled the Akatsuki while Nagato handled duties of the village. She handled all mission requests made to the Akatsuki and she assigned them to whoever she thought was suitable. But Yuzu was always specific in their demands. It was always Itachi. Nagato went there occasionally. I hope he is careful this time around. Last time he returned before the mission was over because he had put some people under Jinjutsu. Nagato shook his head. The Uchiha was smart. But those people in Yuzu were not to be underestimated. Even if Itachi was powerful, those people were not the ones to be fooled easily. The visual prowess was a thing to behold, but the eyes in that village saw everything. They said they made preparations this time around. He is going to stay in places he has to see. I doubt he has seen anything they don't want him to see. Nagato nodded to this. We are going to be doing more missions these days. But it will attract attention, he said. He was referring to Aim Shinobi. But it can't be avoided. We are ready for the world. The village will however remain closed. It isn't time yet. Iwa is trying to hire the Akatsuki to look into Yuzu. Any other village trying? Conan shook her head. At least we know who the enemies are, but we can't afford to do anything at this time. The risk is too great for us. But if they try anything, they will be crushed, Nagato said. We are going to change this world, and there will be no one who will stand in the way. Those who try will be crushed. We have been wronged too often, and because these people have power, they have always gotten away with it. We shall no longer allow them to make us experience pain. If they tried, it was them who would be made to experience the pain they have felt. Perhaps they would understand. Maybe they would not. But this world had to be changed. This order of things would be changed. And they would do it. They would not fail. Conan looked down at the streets. This was at least something they had managed to do. Secure a megacure. The village that once rained constantly now saw daylight. It was a beautiful sight. It was their home. The home they fought to protect when Yahiko was still alive, and the home they now controlled. Uzushi Agakure was a good friend of theirs. They could not accept any mission that required taking action against the land. It had already seen destruction, it would not see another one. What do you think will be Jiraiya-sensei's response when he hears that we are still alive? For some reason, Conan felt like asking the question. Their sensei. The man who taught them ninjutsu. The man who showed them love. He was a good sensei. A good person. When his teammate offered to end their lives, he offered to give them tools for survival. I wonder, Nagato said. But what he says is irrelevant. We have our dreams, Conan. No one will stand in the way. Not even Jiraiya. Later that day. Hidden Leaf. Temari had indulged the thought that Naruto had been watching her all the way. She had felt like she was being watched along the way. But when she stepped into the leaf, she felt like she was really being watched. The eyes were not friendly. She could feel it, and it made her uncomfortable. She really wanted to get to her business, then just get away from the village. Baki had been right. There were forces that were not pleased with how things were progressing. But at least no one in the village was glaring at her. They seemed to be over the invasion. Then again, Suna had really lost as well. Their leader. Her father had been murdered by Orochimaru. Temari wasn't particularly sad by it. Even so, had he been alive, things would have been difficult. The leaf might have forced them to surrender. It was different because they knew and understood that they had been tricked. Temari glanced at the person beside him. The Nara she fought in the Chunin exams. He was the one who welcomed her. He really looked happy with the silence. He was part of the team that entered the exams with Naruto. She wanted to ask, but she bit her lip. She didn't want to pry. Naruto never spoke. It was better to keep things as they were. You people are rather forgiving. If she was able to walk freely here, then her brother would be welcomed when he comes to this village. It wasn't a bad thing, it was good, and she couldn't have it anyway. She wished Suna was like that. She wished people accepted her brother as she has, but she had to forget about it for now. It wasn't going to happen anytime soon. She still held hope nonetheless. She did wonder though, did they treat Naruto in the same way? Temari shook her head. She was thinking too much about that person who left her without a word. Now she was angry. She just wanted to hit him. Not everyone, Shikamaru thought for a moment. I think they just realize it would be too bothersome to hold grudges. Suna didn't cause the Sandame's death, it was Orochimaru. He paused. It is possible that they are blaming everything on Orochimaru. Well, you got to have someone to blame for everything, Temari said. The most convenient choice was always the best. That was how people behaved. That was how people did things. In this case, it isn't exactly wrong, Shikamaru said. To this, Temari nodded. Orochimaru had been the one fighting the Sandame Hokage, and he was the one who murdered her father. If there was someone to hate for the invasion, it was him. Tsunagakure still held some fault nevertheless. They still played their part. Her father had negotiated with Orochimaru. He wasn't killed before plans to invade Konoha were made, he was killed when going to Konoha for the finals of the Chunin exams. The rest of the walk towards the Hokage Tower was in comfortable silence. Tsunade stared at Temari for a long minute before looking at Shikamaru. Thank you, Shikamaru. I will call you if there is something else. Hi, the Nara said lazily before walking away. Temari was amused. To her, it seemed like he was saying, I really hope you don't call me. Please sit, Temari, Tsunade said to the kunoichi. The Godame Hokage leaned back to her chair and stared at the young woman. She really had nothing bad to say to her or about Tsunagakure. They had already discussed things with those in charge at the moment and she was pleased with how things have progressed. She didn't want any bloodshed. She didn't hold any grudges. But it was a fact that Suna had betrayed them even though they were allies. She almost snickered at the thought that after betraying them, Orochimaru had gone to betray them. It was like this in this world. You could never trust anyone with your back. You betray people and others will betray you. She still had to work around that issue. Suna had betrayed them. The village was struggling with resources and it did depend on the hidden leaf on many things. However, Konoha sold them cheap things of low quality because that was what they could afford. There was no charity. Even Konoha had to look after itself. But their situation didn't excuse their actions. Tsunade really didn't want to talk about Suna and Konoha. That was settled. But she knew Danzo wasn't happy. She knew he was probably plotting something. His suggestion had been to even take the Sand siblings and make them Konoha shinobi. Ridiculous. How long are going to stay here? I plan to return tomorrow morning, Temari responded calmly. She took out a scroll and handed it to the Godame Hokage. She didn't have to answer anything. She just had to give the woman the scroll. That was her mission. Tsunade nodded. Please see me before you leave, she said. I need to make preparations for your departure. I will have a team take you back to Suna, she said in a serious tone, but she would not explain anything or her reasons for doing what she was doing. Temari frowned, but she wasn't going to ask. She knew why. Someone had really been watching her since she stepped into this village. This was really a dangerous world, wasn't it? Konoha was big, it was to be expected to have so many forces. I was told that Naruto was in Suna. Temari nodded. He stayed with us for a month. He left after receiving a message from Jiraiya-sama. She was surprised with her response. She didn't say that she left Suna with him and wasn't planning on saying it unless the Hokage led her to it. I'm going to ask some questions. You don't have to feel pressured or forced to answer them, Tsunade started calmly. Who did he spend time with? Was he alone? What was he doing? She was worried, Temari realized. It was like a mother asking about her child. The look her mother had. This woman did care for Naruto. She really did. But Naruto never spoke about it. He never said anything. You wouldn't think there were people who cared for him in the leaf with how he avoided it and kept silence on the subject. Naruto had spoken to her freely and she had a choice here. Temari decided. She decided it was best to relieve the Godame Hokage of her worries. I spent time with him. I was the one who was actually training with him. I saw him every day. Tsunade's eyes lit a bit brightly. I only hear things from Jiraiya, but not from another set of eyes who have sat with him. When he left here, things weren't great. That is why I allowed him to go on the training trip. She paused. How close did you get to him? I don't know how, but we talked. Temari managed a small shrug. Just like how Naruto would respond to the question. God, she was copying his tendencies. Naruto didn't have a lot of people around him when growing up and trusting people was a little difficult. But when he got into a team, he trusted his teammates. They were friends, but the person who shared his loneliness betrayed that trust and nearly killed him. Temari now understood things. She understood why he looked so welcoming yet not very close. She could only think that it was the Uchiha who did it. What a horrible thing to do. But Naruto still didn't look like someone who had trust issues. He talked to people, and he smiled. He hadn't pushed her away. Temari nodded. He is fine after spending time with him. I can't really say there is something bothering him. She would not say though, that he didn't talk about many things personally. She would not say he never brought up Konoha or the Uchiha who nearly killed him. The Uchiha who betrayed his trust. I want some details, Tsunade said. It was more like an order than a request. For a moment, Temari thought of rejecting the request before nodding her head. She could indulge the Godame. Perhaps she would get to see how the experience affected her. Talking about it. Sharing her experience with Naruto to someone who was listening so attentively, Temari felt like she was just breathing new air. It was a good experience. It made her free. She didn't say everything. She kept some details to herself. It seems that he is doing well, Tsunade said with a smile. I was really worried. The goddame looked at the scroll she had been given. She looked at it for a couple of moments. She'd already received a report that it might be so. It was perhaps good that this was happening now. A blessing that Naruto had befriended Temari. She was going to be the Kazukage's sister. They could use her. If things were not going smoothly, she could demand a political marriage. That would bind the hidden sand from doing anything. She could use this card to silence some critics over the way she has handled things. She wasn't going to do it. She was going to wait and see. Your brother is still young. I haven't met him, so I am going to be honest. What do you think? Tsunade asked the blonde wind user. He is capable and Baki has been preparing him over the past year. She would not say that he was simply being put in his position because the council was afraid of him. But that was Suna's internal problem. They would deal with it. If Konoha found out about it, they would work it out. But this didn't mean he didn't have the qualities. He had them and he would do a great job as Kazekage. That isn't very reassuring, but I have seen enough not to underestimate someone because they are young, Tsunade said. I will write to him. Konoha is still open to trading with Sunagakure, but we will have to revise things a bit. Temari managed a smile. I will pass on the message, she said. A couple of days later, when Naruto walked into the room he had rented in this gambling town, he found himself standing face to face with blood-red eyes. Sharingan. Those eyes. Those damned eyes. Naruto really didn't like them. He wouldn't go as far as to say he felt nothing but contempt for them. It would be extreme. He knew this person. This was the elder brother of Sasuke. He should be afraid. He should be worried about the motives of this person. But Naruto was not. He was only curious, but he didn't show it on his face. His heart was beating a little fast, but he wasn't concerned. He needed to silence it. It was a dead giveaway. He walked past the man and settled by the window. Jiraiya was already in town. It was only a moment of time before the Sannin found him. Maybe he was already on his way. Itachi watched Naruto carefully. He should be surprised by the blonde's reaction to his presence, but he wasn't. He didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just watched the blonde walk past him. If Itachi wasn't seeing the blonde, he wouldn't say he was there. He had managed to completely erase his presence. It was remarkable, the tools a trained silent killer. He didn't have much time with the blonde. Jiraiya was probably charging to this place he stood. I want to speak to you, Naruto-kun. Naruto didn't turn to the Uchiha, he merely responded in a cold tone. You have my ears, but not his eyes. Though, I find it interesting that a known S-rank criminal would be interested in just a mere genin. I think we both know you are more than that, Itachi responded calmly. I once served as an Anbu in Konoha and the Sandaime trusted me very much. Naruto glanced at the Uchiha through the corner of his eyes. I know I did see you once or twice. He did speak very highly of you, even after the massacre. Then again, he was still fond of Orochimaru despite everything. The blonde paused. Like I said, you have my ears, but I may not respond. If I want to get answers from you, I'd be forceful, Itachi said calmly. It is about Sasuke-kun. Naruto said nothing. I know you were friends with him. I know things happened and he ended up joining the ranks of Orochimaru. He is training now. Trying to gain power. You once tried to get him to return to Konoha. Would you try again? Naruto faced the Uchiha with a look of indifference. Why? That baffled Itachi, but he didn't let it show. You no longer consider him a friend. It seems there was still no emotion in Itachi's tone. Naruto looked away from Itachi without saying a word. After a couple of moments he responded. I can't really figure out why you are asking. I don't even know why you left him alive. I was thinking perhaps you just couldn't kill your younger brother. He shook his head. Sasuke decided that joining Orochimaru was the best possible cause for him. He wanted his revenge. Whether Orochimaru allows him to get it or not is his problem. I would be happy if he somehow kills Orochimaru, but I won't thank him. Orochimaru once tried to take my body. If he is going to use the same technique as he did with me, he will fail, Itachi said. I merely wanted to confirm if you were still willing to save my brother. At this point, even if he does get his revenge, he is likely to dive deep further into darkness. A man who massacred his entire clan shouldn't care, now should he? Naruto said. You shouldn't stay, of course, Itachi. It makes you look concerned, and that isn't the Itachi the world knows. Itachi narrowed his eyes. Those words were dangerous. Naruto has grown. He did observe the blonde a bit. He had been close to Sasuke, after all. The way they parted wasn't great, but still, he didn't expect the blonde to be so cold. What do you want from me, Itachi? I don't think you have come here for Sasuke. I have been around people, and when they want something, you sense it. This wasn't even the kind of crowd he hanged around with. Having such people with curious glances was even dangerous for him. Never did he even think that he would end up getting a visit from this infamous man. Konoha once worshipped him, but now he was just another Orochimaru. Pitiful. But Naruto didn't care much. He wasn't even fond of the Uchiha. For some reason, the Biju inside of him seemed to appreciate his dislike for those damned corrupted eyes that had the power to bend your will. I wanted to confirm something. Did you? If Naruto was curious, he didn't show it. There was still an air of indifference around him as he responded. Itachi did not respond to the question. He asked a question of his. As far as I am concerned, you are the only other Uzumaki who has no connections to the revived Yuzu. Have they not approached you? I would find it curious if they have not. Naruto glanced at the Uchiha for a moment. This was an interrogation. A soft one. Those eyes were watching every inch of his body, waiting for any sign of deception. Have you been searching for the Uzumaki, Itachi? You're not answering my question. I'm not obligated to answer when you ignore mine, Naruto said with a shrug. I have been to Yuzu and I have traveled around a lot. I haven't come across any Uzumaki. The world is big, Itachi. The survivors of the Uzumaki clan scattered across the elemental nations after the destruction, Naruto said. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? What? In asking that, Itachi realized, Naruto hadn't answered his question and he was steering him away from it. His eyes narrowed dangerously. This was no normal teenager. He was at least able to confirm that. But Yuzu would not show him anything. Maybe someone would slip in something to him, but it was unlikely. Yuzu and Konoha were like brother and sister, and yet, none of the survivors ever took refuge in the hidden leaf. Naruto paused for effect. That is a puzzle, isn't it? It is, Itachi said. I will also reveal a little secret since you don't want to cooperate with me. I am indeed a criminal and massacred my clan, but I still kept contact with the Sandaime Hokage. You see, when it came to you, he did not trust any of the Anbu. He contacted me. I was there when you two visited Yuzu. Naruto turned to face the Uchiha. The mask on his face didn't slip, but he did have a raised eyebrow. Well, that is interesting. Well, at least no one in Konoha knows about it. He turned his eyes outside once more. What else do you know? Admittedly, nothing. This is why I came here. You were interested in Yuzu back then, but now there is nothing. Why? Itachi asked. My time is up, but we shall talk again. Hopefully. The Uchiha disappeared from the room after those words left his lips. A few moments later, Jiraiya burst into the room, looking worried. Naruto turned around to face the Sannin. I'm not paying for that damage, he said. Naruto was fine, but there was no sign of the Uchiha. Jiraiya frowned. He was late. But at least there was nothing wrong. Then again, he didn't exactly think that Naruto would have been harmed. What would Itachi have against his student? The Uchiha was a member of the mercenary group, Akatsuki, but they wouldn't be after Naruto, would they? Glancing at the door on the floor, Jiraiya sighed. I didn't book the room, I can't pay. I was never even here. Naruto sent the Sannin a look. You will regret many things, sensei. That said, he looked back at the window. What took you so long? I gotta held back someone, Jiraiya said with a grin. A young beautiful lady, and you just couldn't resist until you realized she was being manipulated, Naruto said with a shake of his head. You can be remarkable sometimes, sensei. You are only saying that because you didn't see her, Naruto, Jiraiya said. He was firm. Anyone would have been distracted. But sometimes Naruto did act like he didn't recognize beauty when he saw it. Now that Jiraiya thought about, he never saw the blonde with a lady, even though he visited bars. He always came back alone. He was truly missing the joys of life, and this was his student. I'm sure I wouldn't have behaved in the same way as you, Naruto said with a shrug. When are you going to follow me? It would be nice to show you off. I did it once, never again, Naruto said with a slight shake of his head. How was your work? Jiraiya looked thoughtful for a moment. There was no harm done with Itachi, so they would discuss this issue some other time. He would not forget. For now, he was happy. He didn't want to ruin the moment even. Fruitful, the Sannin said calmly. I heard you got close to a certain blonde head. A grin plastered his face. Naruto faced Jiraiya for a moment. That look. The smile. It suggested something, but Naruto wasn't going to think too deeply about it. Temari is a delightful woman. But that was that. Jiraiya shook his head. I don't have to teach you how to get close since you already know the trade, but if you keep watching the birds, they will fly off. You must make a move, he said seriously. You are still too young to talk about marriage, but you need to have fun, Naruto. You mean you're kind of fun, Naruto said. I am not exactly a boring person in case you forgot. You know, I just am more controlled than you. Certainly, the blonde knew how to act. He could sit at a bar and laugh with a couple of ladies while drinking, but he would end it there. Jiraiya could confidently say the blonde knew the body of a woman, and yet, he never seemed eager. The toad sage sighed and settled on the bed. Tsunade was asking about you. I'm sure she was. As she does in her letters, you have a tendency to leave them open so that I can comment. And you don't. You pretend as if you didn't see anything. I don't pretend anything. I just keep my thoughts to myself. Besides, if you didn't ask for my opinion, I can't give it, Naruto said. How long do we have? She didn't stipulate, and I'm honestly fine with the way things are. I failed to do so many things in your younger days. I'm watching you grow, we are close, I am happy with that. But things had to come to an end. Nothing was forever in this world. He knew that. He had experienced it too many times. This end would be on his terms and he would be content with it. There was nothing that could take away the memories he shared with Naruto. There was nothing. The memories were his and he would make some more. But we are still wanted in Konoha, Naruto said. There was no emotion in his tone. And he wasn't looking at the Sannin. Jiraiya couldn't tell if the blonde was displeased. Yes, Jiraiya said with a small nod. We have to cover your Kaiten training, and the Kyuubi's chakra. And we have to do missions for you to earn yourself more experience in battle. If the toads are willing, you will learn Senjutsu. Well, that is quite the schedule, Naruto said. We can do fire and Kyuubi's chakra simultaneously. It isn't my favorite meal to do 2 training exercises at once, but since we don't know when we will end our time together, we don't have a choice, Naruto said. Jiraiya could work with that. Are we going to talk about your skills in Funjutsu? His tone was serious. I don't usually push you for answers, but it is important if we are going to learn controlling the Kyuubi's power. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya at the corner of his eyes before looking at the streets. This town was lively. This wasn't his first time here. He'd come here looking for the old hag. What of my Funjutsu skills, sensei? I put it wrongly, Jiraiya then corrected himself. What is your knowledge regarding Fujinjutsu? You might not be able to apply the art in practical use, but sensei gave you many books about the art to read. He even had me hand over scrolls I have obtained from Minato. He would not tell me what it was for, but I suspected it was for you. He did give me things to read, Naruto said quietly. The third had me consume as much knowledge about Funjutsu as I could filter through my head. He said it was fine even if I didn't understand. I just had to consume the knowledge. He said it had to be on my head. When I was alone, sitting like this, I could search my memories and try studying the structures of seals. Since it was difficult, it would be enough to preoccupy my time. He had 2 reasons for this. He said it was my legacy. It was the legacy of the Uzumaki. The second was that he wanted me to think about something useful. He didn't want me filling my head with thoughts of my loneliness. Because I could concentrate, it was easy just thinking of diagrams I couldn't describe. At the same time, it was frustrating. But I also needed something to think about, so I filled my mind with those diagrams, arrays, drawings. Jiraiya was silent for a long minute as he absorbed those words. He knew of Naruto's habit. He knew the blonde could sit by the window for hours without moving. Why haven't you attempted learning it? Just because your mother was good at it doesn't mean you'll naturally be good at it, Naruto responded calmly. Those were the words the old man used to tell me. Jiraiya sighed. Do you know the secret of the necklace Tsunade gave you? It is a sealing technique, I know, but it can easily be crushed because it works best with Makuten. It is the Shoda's jewel after all, Naruto said. What of it? Jiraiya shook his head. That is just another measure we have in case you lose control. But I don't know what it takes for it to activate. It didn't activate on 4 tails. There were still 5 my tails missing, Naruto said in a flat tone. We will work something out. Those tags you created are still useful. Yes, Jiraiya said with a nod. But he was looking for something a bit more permanent. Those seals required one to get close and Naruto couldn't apply them himself. There had to be something that could be activated automatically or through a hand sign. He would think of drawing up something. But at this stage, his mind could only think of a chakra suppression seal. How was the situation in Sunagakure? He did have a side mission. And now he had to give a briefing. Gaara is going to be made Kazekage. I don't know when they will do the coronation. But you can rest assured. He is a good person who won't think of doing what his father did. I think by now they already know their village is weak. I didn't actually think that they would make him Kage, Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. He is still just a brat. And Suna is a mess. Last time I checked, the Wind Daimyo was no longer even funding it. Their failed invasion hasn't even earned them new allies. That may be true, but Gaara is willing and has a lot to prove, Naruto said. You thought they'd put Baki. Jiraiya nodded. He was the Kazekage's right-hand man. Whatever he did, that man was in it too, the man explained. He then stood up. Let's go out. The day is still in its diapers, we need to let loose of some steam before going for our training. We can stay here for a couple of days before departing. Once we go to it, we'll spend at least 2 months away from people. Best we stock up for those days. Naruto shook his head. You didn't stock up on fun like it was a nutrient that could be stored in your body, but this was his sensei. His perverted sensei. Their time was running out. Perhaps he should indulge the man. He got out of the window and then stared at the Sannin. If you misbehave, I will walk away. Jiraiya grinned. I will be on my best behavior, he said. In your best behavior, you drool from your nose while peeking through a hole on some naked women, Naruto responded flatly. That's called research, Jiraiya said. You should try reading my books. You have all the copies, even ones I have yet to release. I have written one, I don't need to read them, Naruto said with a shrug. You do know Icha is for perverts, right? Jiraiya shrugged and they then started to leave. He picked up the door he had broken and created a clone to take Naruto's things. They'd have to look for a new place to stay. How sad was the old hag? Very, Jiraiya said after shrugging off his surprise at the question. You do need to write to her. Why haven't you? Jiraiya, aren't I reactive to the matters of the heart? Naruto asked. That was a false impression, but who cared? She hasn't written to me either. Tell her to write something and I will respond. Isn't she the parent in this situation? You know, you can be frustratingly simple at times, Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. She'll probably hit you. We can't have that, Naruto said with his eyes closed. Where are you taking me? We are just going to drink. I haven't seen you get drunk. I need to see who will first get drunk between me and you. That isn't a fair competition, sensei. You are a professional and I am just student, Naruto said with a shake of his head. And I only started drinking like last year. If you can't handle it, just say so, but I will consider it my win. Naruto eyed the Sannin for a long minute before speaking. Let us make a wager then. I'm not making a wager with you, Jiraiya said. Last time I ended up walking into a hot spring while naked, a women's bathing place. You were confident you could win. If I had lost, I would have been the one doing it. Jiraiya glared at Naruto. I doubt it. You have a smooth tongue when you want to use it. You could have ended up convincing them that you truly thought it was a men's place. You overstate my abilities, Sensei, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Your student cannot talk a woman who has had 6 bottles to share a bed with him. Jiraiya thought about it before bursting with laughter. He walked closer to the blonde and put his right hand over the blonde's shoulder. Now that is an exaggeration, he said in a whisper. I know you can do better. Naruto glanced at the firm hand on his shoulder before looking at the road ahead. We shall see. Iwagakure. What took you so long? Inoki asked with annoyance as Kuratsuchi walked into his office. I called for you an hour ago. No, Kuratsuchi said with a shake of her head. It was 10 minutes ago. You are losing your sense of time, old man. Can't you even see? Should I get a bigger clock for you? Are you even hearing me? Inoki frowned. If you keep talking like that, I'm not going to retire. Kuratsuchi shrugged. It doesn't matter. You are going to kick the bucket very soon anyway. Inoki thought of sending the black-haired a glare, but he held himself. He tossed aside the mocking of his age and stared at the scroll before him. I have a mission for you. Kuratsuchi smiled at hearing this. She has been holed up in the village. It was nice to be able to go out and do a mission. There hasn't even been anything worthy of her skills. If her grandfather was sending her, then it must be something challenging. What do you want me to do? I want you to go to a town in the Fire Nation. Book a room and a certain man will approach and give you a scroll containing information. Don't lose it. Return immediately upon receiving it. Kuratsuchi frowned. There are messengers for that kind of mission. There is a danger that this person is being followed. If I send someone else, they might not return, Inoki said in a firm tone. The information is also very important. It affects our security. When you leave, please stop by Han and tell him I wish to see him. There is something going on, isn't it? Kuratsuchi asked in a stern tone. Ghosts of the past, Inoki said. I will explain it to you once you return. With the information you will receive, there should be something to talk about. Atagakure. As the days pile up, his master was getting worse. He was coughing blood and now they had bandaged most of his body. He kept in his room. It was almost pitiable. His once active and flexible master had been turned into something human. Something so fragile. Orochimaru was strong. He was powerful. Kabuto knew it better than anyone. He was the best of the Sanins, but now he had been reduced to a fit of coughs, a pained man who couldn't do things himself. It was a spectacular fall, but Kabuto knew. His master would rise up once more. Once he took Sasuke's body, he would be unstoppable. He would become the master that Kabuto had come to respect. For now, he could only watch the pain of his master. He couldn't do anything against it. He entered Orochimaru's room carrying the now customary tray. Orochimaru was sweating badly. A normal person couldn't tolerate the pain, but he was going through it. Your situation is getting worse, Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto said. The body had given away far quicker than both had anticipated. At this point, we will have to move things ahead. There is no need to hurry, Kabuto, Orochimaru said with a shake of his head. There is something that can cure this, but it is a temporary fix. You have to leave here to get it. Kabuto raised an eyebrow. Orochimaru trusted him with all his experiments and he did conduct some research for the man at times, but this was the first he was hearing about it. Should I leave everything you'll need? Yes, Orochimaru said. Behind my throne there are 3 scrolls. Take the smaller one. It has everything you'll need. Hi. How is Naruto-kuna training progressing so far? Ah yes, the mysterious blonde who was being trained by his former teammate. Smoothly, but there is still a lot I don't know. He is still traveling with Jiraiya-sama, so their movements and activities are always covered, Kabuto said. I said we should keep his strength as a secret from Sasuke-kun, but when you come back, we shall go out on a hunt. You're thinking of using him to try to awaken Sasuke's main Gekyo. Orochimaru nodded. He didn't want to admit it, but it was unlikely for him to unlock it. He needed Sasuke to do it for him. Naruto-kun hates Sasuke now, but they were still friends. Sasuke might be able to awaken the main Gekyo after killing him. If it doesn't work out, it will be a good workout to test his strength. Will Jiraiya-sama allow them to fight? Orochimaru grinned. You should know they are not always together. We will wait for that moment. Tanzaku-gai. The conversation was going to come at any moment. Naruto had been counting the stars, waiting for Jiraiya to finally say the words he has been meaning to say. Itachi's appearance should have given him the energy. There were a lot of things that the Sannin has been refusing to say. Perhaps he was enjoying the moment and didn't want to ruin it by saying something that would displease him. For a man who thought himself as a failure, that was one reasonable thought Naruto came up with. Well, they have been on this journey for a while and he had known it would come up. He wasn't dreading the subject. He could take it on without flinching or being all dramatic. He was normal regardless of the subject being discussed. It was perhaps something he learned from that old man. Thinking of Hiruzen, Naruto couldn't help but play a couple of memories from the past. The good days. The whole of Konoha was against him. Academy teachers didn't want to teach him. They made sure to screw things up for him. It was a miserable existence, but Naruto had lived through it. He had endured because that old man was there for him. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. What did Itachi say to you? Naruto Jiraiya finally asked. His eyes never left the blonde, they were stern. He wasn't going to back down if Naruto said he didn't want to talk about it. He was done being careful. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya from the window. The air was flowing nicely. He could use some warm-up once he is done with the perverted Sannin. He had questions. About Sasuke and Yuzu. It was a curious encounter. Why would a criminal be curious about my thoughts if Yuzu approached me? Jiraiya's eyes narrowed sharply. It was a curious thing. But then again, Itachi's actions have always been strange. Jiraiya couldn't understand what motivated the man. He couldn't figure him out. But then again, when he walked in a room, the Uchiha jumped out through the back window. They could never meet, but he was really looking forward to that meeting. That is indeed curious, Jiraiya said in thought. What did he say when you asked? Said his time was up, Naruto said with indifference. I was interested in his answer though. The way he asked didn't exactly sound like man corrupted by power. Then again, you can never be sure about appearances when it comes to the Uchiha. The blonde finished calmly. What if he is working with Yuzu? Jiraiya said. Itachi has an affiliation with the Akatsuki, but I don't know anything about it. I'm merely speculating, but it could make sense if he was asking on their behalf. Jiraiya thought there was a chance that Yuzu recruited rogue shinobi to protect itself. There couldn't be powerful shinobi in the village, so they had to be thinking about hiring shinobi who can protect them. He could be wrong. There wasn't that rumor out of things that reached the Wave Country. Well, he is a powerful shinobi, but again, you still question his motive, Naruto said. Jiraiya nodded. What did he say about Sasuke? Strange, Naruto said. He asked if I was still willing to fight for him, to try to bring him back to the good side. I was given the impression that maybe he doesn't actually hate his younger brother. From what I hear, Itachi loved his younger brother. It could be that he left him alive because he just could not kill him, Jiraiya offered. But that still does leave the door open to many questions. And zero answers, Naruto added. Jiraiya grunted in response. That is true. He paused before asking. What did you say about Sasuke? Are you still willing to try to get him back to the hidden leaf? Why? Naruto said. That is the response I gave Itachi, and I am giving it to you, sensei, Naruto said. There was still no change in emotion. His voice never faltered. He was neither cold nor hot. This lack of emotion frustrated Jiraiya. Not because he expected the blonde to throw a fit. Naruto never did that. He was reserved and controlled. But this indifferent response meant he couldn't read him, and that is what frustrated him. He was your friend, Naruto. You cannot erase the past you shared with you. Regardless of what happens, the Sasuke you shared a past with will always be there, Jiraiya said in a stern tone. Regardless of what happens, Sasuke is a former Hidden Leaf shinobi and the people there still want him back. If you are ordered to bring him back, would you say why? When a shinobi is given a scroll and told to deliver it, does he ask why and what is in the scroll? Jiraiya frowned. Although Naruto wasn't looking at the Sannin, he could tell he was frowning. Exactly, Jiraiya. I would carry out my duty. Itachi was asking for my thoughts on the matter. If it was my choice, what would I do? You didn't answer his question and you didn't answer mine. Your responses have been with questions, Jiraiya said. I gave you a reason. He was your colleague. Now, you can either choose to ignore it or accept it. I have no attachment to the Uchiha, Naruto responded. Honestly, his attachments to the people in Konoha were fragile. He never got too close because he knew it was a fleeting moment. I have not really thought of him since he departed, sensei. At this point, Sasuke is irrelevant to my training and my future. Regardless of how you look at it, those words were just cold. Then again, how many years did he spend chasing after Orochimaru? Did he succeed? Of course not. I really hope I don't become irrelevant. Naruto glanced at the Sannin for a moment before shaking his head. You can be miserable at times, he said. But it is a fact. Sasuke and I were friends. It wasn't what he wanted. He played the role of a mere genin all too well. He ended up getting attached. It wasn't supposed to happen. But he got closer. It was his mistake. You really couldn't fully predict the human emotion. He wasn't sad things ended up in the way did. That was why he wasn't moping. Perhaps people thought he had been miserable after Sasuke left. Yes, he was, but not for the reasons they had in mind. What of Konoha? You've never talked about it. There isn't really nothing much to tell or talk about. That aside, I really didn't want to focus on the leaf. I just wanted to get my head straight into training and forget about Konoha. It doesn't work like that, Naruto. Konoha is home, you have to think about it. Perhaps, but we are still going back. The village isn't under attack. I never felt like talking about it, Naruto said carelessly. What are you worried about, sensei? Are you thinking that if the Uzumaki come knocking I will drop Konoha off the bat without blinking? Jiraiya wasn't that concerned about it, but to say he didn't think about it would be an outright lie. Naruto would have every reason to depart the leaf, and honestly, Jiraiya would not blame him if he decided to leave. Konoha hadn't done him any favors. Minato would be disappointed. The leaf was supposed to be home, but it certainly hadn't treated him like it had been his home, and that was because he was the host of the Kyuubi. Yuzu was still Naruto's home. His mother came from the land. If he wanted to go back, there shouldn't be complaints. But Konoha would not let him leave. They would allow it. There was a sense that the blonde belonged to them. The Kyuubi was their property. Jiraiya sighed. Don't say it like that, Naruto, he said calmly. I understand, but there are people in the Hidden Leaf who are asking questions. I'm a shinobi of Konoha, it is only natural that I be concerned. Naruto didn't offer an immediate response. A couple of moments passed before he spoke. Well, you still don't know if Yuzu is an ally or an enemy. There should be concern there, he said. Everyone is worried about that, Jiraiya said with a nod. Tsunade wants us to be on the lookout for Sasuke. If I get information about his whereabouts, we will move. Any time now, Orochimaru might take over his body. Well, that is what he wants. He is willing to sell his soul to the devil, Naruto said without emotion. But Sasuke is an emotionally unstable, spoiled child. I guess it can't be helped. So you won't have a problem. Naruto shook his head. Not at all. A mission is a mission and we can't have Orochimaru becoming powerful. It would become a problem, he said. When do we move? I'm still waiting for some information, Jiraiya said. He was silent for a couple of moments before speaking. I feel that there is a storm that is coming. It is making me nervous. This world might become unstable and the peace might be threatened. Naruto wasn't all that deep into the talk of peace. Jiraiya surely loved the subject and Naruto had indulged the Sannin on a couple of times. Well, we must be prepared for everything. In this world, you never know what is going to happen tomorrow. This is why we must always be prepared for anything. To this, Jiraiya nodded. I'm going to see one of my contacts, the Sannin said, standing up. You want to come? Naruto shook his head. I have had enough activities for the day. I wish to stay and I will go out tomorrow to stretch some muscles. Jiraiya nodded and walked away from the room. With the Sannin gone, Naruto released a long breath he'd been holding. Silence. Peace. The solitude. Finally. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you next